In the 2006 Alfonso Cuarón film, Children of Men, for some reason, the entire world is afflicted with infertility. Pregnancies become fewer and farther in between, and finally, no one is expecting. When the film opens in the year 2027, it has been exactly 18 years since the last baby was born. There are officially no more children on earth, and none are expected. With this lack of expectation, the world had dissolved into chaos. As the playgrounds became silent, grief mounted, eventually twisting into its ugly cousin, despair, not only from a lack of children, but also from the loss of expectation about a shared future for humanity. In that dissolution into chaos, it became apparent that expecting human life to continue had held people together in the now. Regardless of individual choices about children, people needed a collective expectation that somebody's children would continue the chain of life after mortality touched the world's current residents. Human beings have a psychological need to be part of a chain of life that is larger than ourselves. Our awareness of our own mortality can be mitigated by the sense that humanity, at least, will continue. That not only might our own small life stretch from Abraham Lincoln to the man on the moon, but that also maybe somebody 50 years from now will stand in this pulpit or in a classroom somewhere, or a theater, or a backyard, and tell a story about us. This sense that something of us, be it song or story, culture or wisdom, dreams or doings, will continue with those who come after us, grounds us in the now and in each other. Without the sense of being able to pass life on, in the story Children of Men, grief turned into despair, despair turned into nihilism, and nihilism turned into violence. Gangs formed, riots became regular, and most of the governments of the world crumbled. In the film, expecting was larger than a single life, but it was rather part of our shared understanding of time and mortality and meaning-making. How does expecting work in your life? Do you carry with you a particular sense of the future, of what your life or your loved ones' lives will become? And does that sense of the future tie you to the people who are around you as you travel together towards that future? Here in church, we work to have a shared expectation, which admittedly is a challenge with 750 individual expectations trying to come together. And yet, that's just what the church leadership took on 3 years ago when they set out to develop our ends statements. The board invited you all in to dream together in workshops where they asked you, where could loving and grace-filled courage lead us next? More than 250 members of our congregation answered that powerful question, and grounded in stories of the best we have been together in the past, you all dreamed together of where loving and grace-filled courage might take us in the future. You filled big pieces of paper with vibrant pictures of a church bursting with life, people of all ages and races and shapes and colors and sizes singing together and working together and creating community and justice and joy together, both here and out in the city. And from these big dreamings, this vision of a multi-generational, multicultural, spiritual community of joy and justice making, the board articulated 8 end statements of what we must do next to move together towards that vision of the future. These end statements are what we will become together if we do the good work of shared ministry. We, the members and friends of the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee, will, first of all, value, develop, and celebrate the gifts that come from authentic connections across difference, particularly racial, ethnic, and generational difference. If we do that good work together, we'll also, number 2, recognize power differences and challenge injustice where it arises. And number 3, we will follow the leadership of the people who are directly affected by injustice, partnering with them to move the Milwaukee community towards justice. And here in our community, we will, number 4, continue to generously give and receive support and connection and care in times of joy and challenge. We will, number 5, promote Unitarian Universalism and our shared values out in the world. We'll, number 6, open ourselves to wonder, making ourselves vulnerable and available to find meaning and inspiration and transformation. We will, number 7, create communal experiences that celebrate our interconnectedness. And number 8, we'll create accessible, courageous, and innovative welcome to people who might find a sense of belonging and a spiritual home here with us. These are our shared expectations. The board articulated them, but they came from you all, from your vision of that beautiful, vibrant, multi-generational, multicultural community of joy and justice that we're moving forward towards together. And these are the things that we will accomplish first to get closer to that vision. I think in the secular world, they called these things like goals or something. Is that right? These are our goals, our ends. Those ends are our seeds of intention. We had planted them, and now the time is to start watering and weeding and tending our garden. Like a garden, however, it's not through willing the seeds to sprout that we make the garden grow. We can put our heads on the ground and shout, "Grow, seeds, grow!" And it is unlikely to have an effect. There is still wildness in any little plot of earth. When we say a process is organic, it means that life itself is in control. We might contribute, give a hand, help it along, but screaming at the seeds and willing them to grow is not how it works. Life will move at its own pace, weaving together all the elements that it needs: sunshine and rain, worm poop and bee love, shade and night and rest. The trick to gestation is patience and faith. Gestation takes time. Seedlings creep underground for a while, and building a baby takes time and food and rest and food and rest and food and rest. Our expectations of life, of organic beings and becomings, must make room for multiple mysteries, mystery upon mystery. First, there's the mystery of the elements beyond your will alone. The elements of sun and rain and bee and worm. And second, there is the mystery of the will of the being itself that is becoming. The seed in your insistently wild garden has its own pattern to live out. And when that baby finally comes, she is going to tell you what kind of person she'll be. It makes sense that the phrase, "we're expecting," ends there without an object. Because you can never really expect what's going to come with a child. Life, in its fullness, is always a surprise. Organic life, true community, and real transformational growth are all like that. They take time, they require patience, and they involve mystery upon mystery. We might all read the best practices for pregnancy or gardening or church health and do many things to create a better environment for baby or plant or members. But we cannot control what grows. The baby will come when he will come. The garden will grow as it will grow. And the people will love how they will love. This is the way of organic things, the way of life flourishing. It involves so much more than any one individual will. In our Children of Men story, science and medicine and human will failed to make new babies come. The affliction was bigger and more mysterious than any of those things alone could fix. The story took place in England, and the combination of grief and nihilism and fear led to fascism there. The story opens with the government policing the borders with giant fences and machine guns and hatred and deep fear of immigrants. Immigrants already in the country are persecuted and detained and sent to concentration camps, as are anyone who resists the fascist state. And it is rumored that some of those concentration camps are actually death camps. Key, who is a young Black woman refugee in the story who is trying to find safety, seeks help from an immigrant rights group. When the main character, Theo, who is an educated English man with lukewarm support for immigrant rights, wishes Key the best but tells her he can't help her get to safety, Key tells Theo one more thing. She's 8 months pregnant. And just like that, the world is expecting again. There's a little glimmer of hope in this dystopian story, resting on this one immigrant woman and her unborn child. Of course, Theo decides he'll do anything possible that he can help, to help for her and to help save the rest of the world whose healing is so deeply interwoven with this woman's safety? Of course, humanity doesn't realize that its fate is so interwoven with the most marginalized. It doesn't understand that its future depends on Key's safety and well-being, and in humanity's ignorance and illusion of separateness, it continues the relentless persecution and exploitation of immigrants. One side, the rebels, wants to use Key and her baby as a tool to fight the British government, while the other side, that British fascist government, wants to capture Key and execute her with the rest of the detained immigrants and protesters. A few good people along the way take risks and make incredible sacrifices to save Key and thus the world. And yet all around them, society disintegrates as people who have lost hope behave terribly, unknowingly harming the one hope waiting for them in Key's womb. What is the relationship between expectation and action? How do we take action in an ambiguous world where we don't know where the hope for the future lies, and we cannot be sure of what the results of our work will be? Here at First Church, we have an expectation that as a people of faith, we will be part of making the world a better place, but we don't know how that will happen. In an ambiguous world, we do know how to not be part of further harm. We know repeatedly that we must say no to that kind of harm, no to racism and xenophobia, a clear no to hatred and fascism, a loud and unrelenting no to concentration camps and family separations. But we also together must learn what to say yes to. We must learn to say yes to a faithful, deliberate, intentional, growing movement towards a better tomorrow. Last year, the Krug gift acceptance team, in conversation with your board, moved faithfully towards our 8 ends, those first movements towards the vision of our future, by allocating funds to visionary projects created by our members. We planted those projects as seeds in the ground together, and this year we're going to water them and see what grows. The seeds that push up through the soil and wind their way through the garden will be in relationship with the rest of us and the world at large, and along the way there's going to be sun and rain and rabbits and surprises. Over the summer, we had an astoundingly good surprise. We learned that our beloved Betty Zillman left First Church in her will a legacy gift of $275,000. In all of our planning together to make the ends real, using a portion of the Krug bequest to fund those projects, to implement the ends, we never expected to be receiving $250,000, let alone so soon. And yet here we are, blessed with this incredible generosity from Betty, fierce, independent Betty who loved this church so dearly. Betty was quiet in her generosity, and I can just imagine her now standing here in her red coat and long skirt, shaking her head at me for announcing it to all of you. But it is good for us to honor and remember her and to be inspired by her giving, to also give what we can to this place, to this vision of the future we share together, whether we give in the form of work or resources or bequests. Life, in all its creativity, will weave each element of us and the gifts we give together to shape our future. In Children of Men, Key finally gave birth to a baby girl in a dirty room while war raged all around her. She had to flee soon again after giving birth as factions fought to control her body and her baby. But in that moment of flight, there is a piece of the film that took my breath away. After she gave birth, Key and Theo ran with the baby wrapped tightly in swaddling clothes in Key's arms, dodging bullets flying between a fascist government trying to kill them and a rebel faction trying to kidnap them. And there, in that moment of war, the baby starts to cry. And everything stops. The soldiers stop firing their guns. The rebels stop exploding their bombs. And the stunned killers and kidnappers stand silent, staring in the midst of this mayhem at the single small cry of a sacred child. And time stood still as her mother walked through the lines of fighters, staring in open-mouthed wonder at new life, at another baby born in this world. That's how it should always be. Every single child is that sacred. And we should not have to dissolve into chaos in order to understand a child's stunning beauty. No children should ever be torn from their mothers, kidnapped or born in filthy rooms or detention centers or sent to camps. We don't know which baby might save the world, which of our young ones will lead her people out of desolation or find a new source of energy or sequester carbon or convince humanity to finally change its consuming ways. But we do know right now that each and every child, each and every human being is inherently sacred, each life so stunningly full of mystery and complexity and food and sun and rest and people that we must work tirelessly with joy and commitment in our shared home together, led by loving and grace-filled courage, not knowing how it will all happen, but taking the next step faithfully right now to be one small part of the larger love that saves us all. May it be so.